The New Orleans attack had less to do with ISIS and radicalization than it had to do with government incompetence. Firing the right people after a tragedy, explained today on The 10th Man. The attack is only a few days old, and it's too early to draw many conclusions unless it's to analyze the response of the government, including the media. They say it's not terrorism, then they say it definitely is terrorism. He must have had help, he acted alone. They analyze the killer, they talk about mistakes that were made, but they make their own mistakes, they push falsehoods. You have to wonder, do they even want to keep us safe? At first, of course, they said it was not terrorism, as if you could possibly miss the fact that he was flying an ISIS flag. Next, they said it was terrorism, but he did not act alone. Now they're saying it's terrorism 100%, and he acted alone. And how did this happen? Well, he was radicalized. Even though he was a former soldier who fought in Afghanistan, presumably against the forces he now purportedly supports. Now, the reason they did the flip-flopping on the terrorism issue is they don't want it to be terrorism. The government wants it to be something that the government's not in charge of. That's why they like to blame guns or MAGA or white supremacy. But as soon as you make it terrorism, it becomes the government's fault. You have to remember what the definition of terrorism is. It's not just anybody who does something awful. The purpose of terrorism is to convince you that your government cannot keep you safe. Of course, it is the government's job to keep you safe. So the government doesn't want it to be terrorism. They want it to be something else, because otherwise they haven't done their job. This is where radicalization comes in. Din Jabbar was a real estate agent, a regular guy. He was in the army. He had a job, recently earning in the six figures. He had a college degree. But then he became radicalized. And what does that mean exactly? Well, it doesn't really mean anything. It's just the name they apply after the fact to somebody they need to call a terrorist. It's just a magic inevitability based on the power of the ISIS bogeyman. It's a convenient term for the government because it explains away something that is their responsibility to prevent. Well, the government could have just saved themselves some trouble, because I'm here to tell you he was not a terrorist. He was not radicalized. He was just a loser. He was a nut job. The man was a failure in his job, multiple jobs. He was a failure in his family. He was a failure in society. And so he set off to make a name for himself. Was he really with ISIS? Well, anything's possible, but I doubt it. Anybody can put up an ISIS flag and say they're doing a terrorist attack. And all he had was a flag. Does it make it a terrorist attack representing ISIS because he bought a flag on the internet? Here's a question for you. Did he get out of the truck and challenge the police? Did he charge them shouting Allahu Akbar? Because if he didn't, we're going to say that this is a false flag attack, a literal false flag attack, when you go and attack making a flag or attack waving a flag of some other party that you're not a member of. Oh, and we're not the only ones saying this. I saw a very good presentation on YouTube yesterday with a Dr. Todd Grand, or perhaps Grandee, Grand with an E on the end. And I recommend you watch it because you have to remember one basic principle of police work. And that is that a confession is not evidence. A confession does not prove you committed the crime. I could confess to the assassination of Abraham Lincoln. Doesn't mean I did it. Do you remember the BLM riots a few years ago? Do you think everybody out smashing cars and setting buildings on fire was really fighting for racial justice? Or did they just know they would be welcomed in that mob by the other rioters? We need to beware of people seeking glory through violence under false flags, especially the well-off. Luigi Mangione assassinated a family man and business executive under the flag of health care reform. Was it a false flag? That's a matter of opinion, but it's a fact that he killed someone. He said it's for health care reform, and everyone thinks he's a hero, regardless of his real reason. It's the same thing with Jabbar. Neither one was a crusader. Both were nut jobs with a mission to find fame. We have a lot of myths to debunk in our country. One of them is about the mass murders, all the mass murders committed by people with guns and AR-15s. But the gun is not the focal point of mass murder statistics. The focal point of mass murder is familicide. Most of the mass murders in the United States, 60%, are familicides, someone killing members of his own family. And it's relevant because Din Jabbar initially embarked on a mission of familicide. He was going to kill everybody in his family, but then he decided it would be not right to kill members of his family. And the words in which he put it were that it would not do enough damage to support the ISIS cause fighting the unbelievers. But clearly an analysis of this shows that what he was really looking for was an approved way to kill multiple people. And he couldn't see any way that he would be remembered fondly by anyone if he just killed his family, which he wouldn't because that happens all the time. So he decided upon killing innocent people, people he didn't even know, and doing it under the ISIS flag. That might give him fame and recognition, and it worked. Because by being an ISIS killer, he's not just famous, or rather infamous, he can actually think of himself as a hero. So when you get right down to it, this guy was not an ISIS member. He didn't have an ISIS qualification card. He just claims to be ISIS. ISIS may or may not take credit for the killings, but he was still just a nut job. And that's no surprise. All the ISIS killers are nut jobs, but not all nut jobs are ISIS killers. Let's look at the government response, which is also the media response. The media tell us all about Din Jabbar. They tell us that he's an American citizen born in Texas. They tell us he's an Army veteran. All these things are to show us what? Are they trying to make him a MAGA Republican? Is it to counter the fact that he's Muslim and that his family comprises recent arrivals to this country? When actually few people care about the fact that he's Muslim. We all know that there are many Muslims who are allies with us in the war on terror. And nobody's concerned about immigrants. We only care about illegal immigrants. And we care about the immigrants who are criminals. If you come here, you're fine. Just don't kill people. Come here legally and live your life and get along with others and you'll be fine. The government is taking a special interest in his rifle, his AR-15. Interesting, that's come up several times. And now we're starting to get down to business. The FBI taking special interest in his AR-15. Why would that be? His AR-15 didn't kill anybody. It was basically a prop. He did shoot 2 policemen with it, or the handgun he was carrying, and he was shot himself. Now just wait until they examine the bodies. They're going to be looking, hoping they find more bullets in some of the bodies so that they can call this a mass shooting. We've seen this before. We've seen it with shootings and we saw it with COVID, right? Everybody who died, if they had COVID or exposure to it, they called it a COVID death. Yes, they want to call this a mass shooting too. They've done it before. And what about the bombs? How many bombs did he have? And we're lucky those didn't go off. Remember, bombs are important. We think of the Columbine shooting often as the first modern-day school shooting. But it wasn't a school shooting, it was a school bombing. The bombs just didn't go off, so they had to go in and start shooting. And the worst school attack in U.S. history was also a bombing attack back in the 1920s. More people were killed in that attack than in any other school attack. and there was no gun anywhere near the place. But the government is just fascinated by guns because that's their agenda. They really should be more interested in the truth. They really should be more interested in the murder weapon, the pickup truck. They just keep calling the murder weapon a truck, and that's interesting because they keep saying a Tesla exploded in Las Vegas, but in New Orleans it's just a pickup truck. We'll have to talk about this some more because this is the biggest point of all. The FBI has warned us about copycat events. Well, it's about time. They never warned us about copycats with the shooting attacks. They just publicize attacks involving firearms and thus encourage more of them. They make those people famous, and that's why other mass attacks involving guns take place. But the copycat warning should have come after the attack in Germany 2 weeks ago. Because vehicle ramming attacks, that's the proper term, vehicle ramming attacks are very common and deadly. Yet the government has a campaign against firearms only. So it downplays vehicle ramming attacks, and that puts all of us in danger. Rather than concentrate on public safety and how to keep us away from such dangers, or how to keep dangers away from us, the government just talks about gun laws. There has been some talk about the bollards that were in place at the ends of Bourbon Street, but not working. Those bollards were installed after the huge mass attack in Nice, France in 2016. 86 people were killed by that truck, and more than 400 injured. That's more dead than in the Norway 2011 youth camp shooting. And of course, there were later vehicle ramming attacks in Germany a few months after the Nice attack, and then of course the recent one in Germany just last month. Cars have always been a greater danger than guns. We have vehicle ramming attacks all the time. But the government has been busy passing new gun laws, regardless of the ineffectiveness of them. Do you remember some of the vehicle ramming attacks we've had? Let's just do a comparison. Back in 2021, Oxford High School in Michigan was the scene of a targeted school attack with 10 victims, 4 of whom died. That's very sad. But a week earlier, a vehicle ramming attack in Waukesha, Wisconsin during the Christmas parade had nearly 70 victims, 6 of whom died. Isn't that actually much worse? And yet we got a bunch of new gun laws out of that bloody month. 15 months later, a shooter at Michigan State University shot 8 people, 3 of whom died. Meanwhile, a man in a U-Haul truck in New York City hit 9 people on the very same day, 1 of whom died. That's pretty serious. But that was not as serious as the 2017 New York City truck attack, also with a U-Haul, with 19 victims who were not as fortunate because 8 of them died. So America appreciates the warning, FBI, but it's several years too late. While politicians have been telling us that kids are being killed by guns, government agencies keep quiet when they know cars are the bigger danger to our kids. Speaking of murder weapons, have you noticed anything strange about the New Orleans ramming compared to the Las Vegas, Nevada bombing in front of the Trump Hotel? And pardon my stuttering, most people say New Orleans, but they say New Orleans, and I sometimes forget to say the right one. But think about what you've heard about these 2 attacks. You hear that in New Orleans, a pickup truck ran over some people. They just say pickup truck. But if you turn on the news right now, you'll hear about a Tesla Cybertruck that exploded in Las Vegas. A Tesla Cybertruck. Both of these were pickup trucks. Why do they say a Tesla Cybertruck in Las Vegas and just say a pickup truck in New Orleans? It should be the other way around. In New Orleans, the pickup truck was the murder weapon. In Las Vegas, the pickup truck was just the container for the bomb. And then it's actually non-factual. They say a Cybertruck exploded. A Cybertruck did not explode. A bomb in the Cybertruck exploded. What a contrast. In the case of the Las Vegas explosion, they keep saying Cybertruck, Cybertruck, Cybertruck. But in New Orleans, they just say pickup truck, pickup truck, pickup truck. When it was not merely a pickup truck, it was a very special pickup truck. It was a Ford Lightning, a Ford F-150 Lightning, which is an electric truck. And the Ford Lightning was the actual murder weapon. It was not the transportation. It was the actual cause of death for the 14 victims. And it was the perfect weapon for this purpose. If you think about it, a greater percentage of the Ford Lightnings built have been involved in mass murders than have AR-15s. And this attack was all too predictable. Because the worst vehicle ramming attack, the one in Nice, France, was accomplished with a garbage truck. Well, it wasn't a garbage truck per se, but a big, large, straight truck. We'll call it a garbage truck. It was big, heavy, and powerful, and could kill a lot of people if it could get to them. So imagine all the ISIS leaders in a meeting room in Qatar or Dubai or someplace, and they're saying, now, what should we put down for a recommendation on our website? And they do that, you know. On our website on how to conduct a vehicle ramming attack. And one of them says, well, we want something as big and heavy and powerful as a garbage truck, but wouldn't it be better if we had something that was smaller? Because they're going to be watching for garbage trucks. What could we do that would be just as effective? And maybe easier to procure? And somebody says, how about one of these electric pickups? You know, I've seen the government crash tests where they show, and you may have seen these, they show a Rivian pickup and they show it's too heavy to be held back by the standard highway guardrails. It goes right through them. The electric trucks can go right through highway guardrails. The Ford Lightning weighs a ton more than a regular Ford F-150. And it's fast. And unlike the garbage truck or the Cybertruck or the Rivian, nobody's going to give it a second glance in traffic because it just looks like the regular Ford F-150. And here's the big one. It's silent. The victims will not hear it coming. And then ISIS said, well, yeah, but where's anybody going to get one of those? They're expensive. And the answer? Well, all of these Americans, they have cell phones and they've got car rental apps on them, car sharing apps called Turo. Anybody can go on there without a government background check and rent an electric truck, the ideal terrorist vehicle. And all they got to do is have a credit card and a driver's license. Now, don't you have to wonder why the FBI wouldn't have had a watch list like, sure, you can rent out your death truck on Turo, but not before a major holiday, and not to any radicalized Army veterans with at least 2 divorces, financial problems, and living in a ramshackle trailer, who, why would he want to spend his money on a F-150 Lightning? And again, you're not going to see Ryder trucks and U-Haul trucks or even cyber trucks sneaking through the city at 2 a.m. But you can do that with a Ford Lightning. So the question for all of us is, if ISIS can figure all this out, and if a podcaster can figure it all out, why couldn't the FBI, who gets paid to protect us, figure it out? You know, there's a single solution to all these problems. I don't mean a single tactical action to take, like banning guns or banning electric trucks. That would be idiotic. But there is a single philosophical, a single management solution to all these problems. And what is that? The solution is to hold officials accountable. The people who are responsible for our safety, let's hold them accountable for keeping us safe. So by that, do we mean the mayor of New Orleans? Well, yes, the mayor and the chief of police, because the bollards weren't in place, and they should have been in place and working. That's why the mayor should be fired. But the bollards are just the last line of defense. They should have had some big dump trucks or maybe some Ford Lightnings blocking the streets all around the perimeter. You can't have bollards in every single street, but you put dump trucks on the next block over, and then you have the police where the bollards are, and then when somebody tries to breach the dump trucks, then the police can respond before they've broken into the street. Any competent chief of police knows this, or they're supposed to know this. The chief of police also knew that his bollards weren't working, and should have either raised Cain about it, or added additional measures, or closed the street, or resigned in protest. But none of those things happen, because we don't hold people accountable. And the politicians know it. We have been known to fire people. Eventually, after the Trump assassination attempt, they did fire the director of the Secret Service. The problem there was it took so long, and her boss was not also forced out. In the current situation, Merrick Garland, head of the Department of Justice, which includes the FBI, he's the man in charge of anti-terrorism. He's the man whose people are now saying this perpetrator was 100% inspired by ISIS, when he was not. Garland should be fired if he doesn't resign first. And not just a political firing, everybody should hate him after this tragedy. And not just for New Orleans. If you're on the left, Garland is the one who ignored all the evidence that led up to the January 6th mass misdemeanor trespassing event. And if you're on the right, he was the one in charge of the raid on Mar-a-Lago and for the weaponization of the Justice Department. And when you tell the FBI to do things other than what they're supposed to do, which is keep us all safe, tragedies like New Orleans are the result. Almost exactly 2 years before President Trump was shot, Shinzo Abe, the former Prime Minister of Japan, was assassinated. When that happened, the result in Japan was the top security official and his deputy both resigned. They weren't asked to resign. They weren't fired. They knew it was their duty to resign, and they did. In America, however, the politicians just say how outraged they are. My former congressman, Elissa Slotkin, was sworn in today as a senator, the newest senator from Michigan. She presided over the two school shootings we just talked about, the one at Oxford and the one at Michigan State University. She said how outraged she was. She asked for the flags to be flown at half-staff, got the failed school system at Oxford a bunch of money, and now she's promoted to senator. Her Democrat associate, Pete Buttigieg, the Secretary of Transportation, how many train derailments have we had under him? How many ships colliding with bridges? How many airplane doors blowing off, and worse? Did he take responsibility? Did he resign? No, he's going to retire with honors once Trump is inaugurated, and then he's going to move on and run for governor of Michigan. He's not from Michigan, by the way. We have tragedies like New Orleans, not because we don't hold people accountable, but because we do the opposite. We reward them. Never mind even what I've said about what they're doing wrong. Focusing on guns, trying to attack Tesla, failing to blame the Ford Lightning, because everybody has an opinion, and I'm just saying what I would do. Another individual might do something different if he were in charge. But what matters are not opinions, but results. So let's stop the debate and just go by one simple principle, and that is to hold accountable the officials responsible. When things go wrong, fire them, and the politics will stop. Fire them with the threat of prosecuting them, and I guarantee you they will at least try to do the right thing and not just the political thing. We can let those leaders go ahead and ban drinking after midnight, ban guns, ban trucks, ban electric vehicles, raise the drinking age, the gun ownership age, prohibit Turo, cancel New Year's Eve. Do whatever you want as long as it works, as long as it stands the test of time. Don't give us mindless laws and restrictions, whether it be gun laws or the Patriot Act. Just keep Americans safe. Let the politicians in charge figure that solution out. And when their ideas don't work, then throw them out for someone who will do the job. Thank you so much for listening.